Do you ever wonder why you just had to give your friend advice, even when they didn't ask? What if I told you that the urge to give unsolicited advice isn't about them at all, but a giant flashing arrow pointing right back at you? We're about to uncover the surprising truths that your well-intentioned advice is actually hiding about your own life. Because if you constantly give unsolicited advice, it's probably not because you're helpful. It's because your nervous system can't sit with uncertainty. This video is for you if you jump into fixing mode without realizing it. You feel compelled to help, guide, or correct. You secretly feel unappreciated when people don't take your advice. And maybe people even tell you, I didn't ask for advice. Today I'm breaking down why unsolicited advice is a trauma response, where it actually comes from, and how it can quietly damage your relationships, even when your intentions are good. And I'm not speaking from the outside. I grew up receiving constant unsolicited advice, starting with my mother and continuing well into an adulthood. And the reason why it always bothered me, it's because my feelings were never explored, my experience wasn't trusted, and there was no space for me to feel how I felt or experience what I was experiencing. And before I healed, I kept attracting the same kind of people who did the same thing. So it was different people, same pattern. So the reason why I'm making this video is because I know exactly how it lands on the other side and how damaging it can be for relationships. But I also understand now why people do it. Because once you heal, you can see the pattern clearly. So the first point I want to make about this topic is unsolicited advice is your anxiety looking to be soothed by being in control. And this is the belief I'm breaking down. A lot of people will say, I'm just trying to help. And sometimes, yes, that is the case. But very often, unsolicited advice is what happens when you feel dysregulated. So if someone is sharing their uncertainty, their pain, their confusion, their emotional experience, instead of staying present and giving them the space to feel their feelings, your body panics. So you offer solutions, you give instructions, you jump right into like, oh, this is what you should do. And it's not because they asked, it's because you don't feel safe sitting with someone else's uncomfortable feelings. And advice becomes a way for you to regulate your discomfort. And just to be clear, this doesn't make you bad. I am not criticizing anyone. This makes you a human being, because what this means is that the advice isn't actually about them, it's about you. And the reason why I'm not criticizing everyone, I know I repeat myself in my videos, but it's worth repeating. The behavior strategies that we have, they were developed when we were children and teenagers, because with very few exceptions, all of us were from 0 to 18, we were raised by our primary caregivers, who are usually our parents, and that's a legal situation that we have no control over. And sometimes those environments are chaotic and dysfunctional, so we develop these behavior patterns so that we can psychologically or even physiologically survive in them, which is actually very intelligent. But then the problem becomes we carry those same behaviors into adulthood when we don't need them anymore. So it can actually create more pain and dysfunction than good. So the whole point of this video is to bring awareness to it. So I'm going to give you a few action steps before I go on to how you can actually start changing this behavior in real time. Number one, when someone is venting to you or you're in a situation where you have the urge to give advice, the first thing you can do is simply be aware. And I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but that is huge, because so many of our beliefs and behaviors are running on these subconscious programs. So for example, there's going to be so many people who give unsolicited advice who don't even watch this video and scroll right past it, because, or they're not even searching for it because they're not even aware that they're doing this. So the fact that you're even watching this far in the video is huge, because you are aware that you're doing it, and that's amazing. Celebrate that win. Like, give yourself a pat on the back. Like, just take a moment to realize how amazing that is, that you have that level of self-awareness. So, and then carry that into your day-to-day life, and just simply be aware of when you have the urge to give unsolicited advice. And don't beat yourself up if you're still doing it. Just be aware of when you feel the urge and when you're doing it. And the second step is, when you have the urge, before you say anything to them, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And identify that feeling, because it's usually your own anxiety. So I will get into a few more action steps later, but next I want to talk about where this pattern actually comes from, because it doesn't come out of nowhere. You weren't born giving unsolicited advice. Most people who give unsolicited advice were raised in environments where their emotions weren't processed. They were controlled by their caregivers. Maybe it was an environment where problems had to be solved quickly, which is very common in chaotic environments. And along with that is uncertainty wasn't allowed or tolerated. Or it could be that being helpful was how you stayed safe or valuable. And if that is the case, I said in my last video I was going to do this, but I'm doing it for sure in my next 3 videos. I'm covering the 3 primary beliefs of people pleasers. And one is, my worth comes from what I do for others. So sometimes that means if I'm being helpful, then I am worthy. So if that resonates, stay tuned for that video. But anyway, my point is, these are all behaviors that you learned early on because maybe fixing proved your worth, or being useful meant that you were loved by your parents. So now when someone is struggling, your nervous system just goes on this automatic knee-jerk reaction of, okay, I know what to do. And then you go right into fixing mode and doing the things that you're used to doing. But here is the thing. Unsolicited advice is completely skipping curiosity about the other person's situation or experience. It skips truly listening to what they're going through. And it totally skips respect for the other person's autonomy. And when advice comes before understanding any of that, it's saying to the other person, I don't trust you to navigate your own life. And even if that's not what you mean, that's usually how it feels to the receiving person. So another thing I ask you to reflect on, if you struggle to let other people struggle, that's not compassion. That's not trusting them to live their own lives. Compassion would be allowing them to feel how they feel and allowing them to experience what they're experiencing, even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't understand it. Because let's face it, if someone truly did want advice, they would ask you for it. So what is the cost of giving unsolicited advice? Even when your intentions are good, because honestly, I do feel like the intentions are good most of the time. But I really, if you are a giver of unsolicited advice, I really want you to understand what it does on the receiving end. It makes people feel unseen, it makes them feel second-guessed, and it makes them feel disconnected from their own intuition or logic. And in the case of a child, if you're a parent and if you're doing this to a child or teenager that you're raising, then this could actually like instill beliefs in them that start running on their own unconscious pattern. For example, and this happened to me. So for example, my experience isn't valid unless someone else confirms it. Other people know better than me. Or I should defer to something outside of myself instead of trusting myself. And the problem with that, first of all of those beliefs will create very low self-worth, and they also create people pleasers and always searching for answers and validation outside of themselves. But in terms of relation and connection, people will stop being honest with you. They're going to stop sharing their messy experiences, and they're going to stop coming to you for connection. Or even worse, they may stop coming to you at all, because being understood always feels safer than being fixed. And like, that is the worst feeling, I think, when you're feeling your feelings or having an experience and someone's trying to fix you. It actually makes you feel worse. So another action item that I would love for you to explore, and honestly, and I have had to do this too, and this is like one of the most important things I've learned in my life. Before giving advice, ask one simple question. Do you want advice, or do you just want to vent? Like, just be blunt and upfront on the front end so it eliminates any misunderstanding or whatever on the back end. And if they say they want to vent, then your only job is to provide a safe space for them to feel however they're feeling, experience whatever they're experiencing, whether you agree with it or not, or whether you like it or not. If it makes you uncomfortable, that's not their problem. And also, if it makes you that uncomfortable that you can't sit with it or you can't deal with it, then it's your responsibility to set a boundary with that person. Like, hey, I can't deal with these problems. Do you have someone else you can speak to about it? So my point with all of this is, not everything needs to be solved. Not everyone needs guidance, and not every problem is yours to handle. Real emotional maturity is being able to sit with someone else's experience without needing to control it. And I promise you, when you stop giving unsolicited advice, your relationships will deepen, people will feel safer with you, and your nervous system will learn to tolerate uncertainty, because you'll understand that other people, even though it's making you uncomfortable, you're still safe. You are an adult, and you can still keep yourself emotionally safe in these situations. So it's not that you're becoming less helpful, you're actually becoming more trustworthy. And the last thing I'll say on this is, I work with women. Most of the women who come to me, they are chasing love and approval and everything outside of themselves, because their source of emotional safety is everywhere but in here. But to overcome external approval addiction, my GLOW method teaches them to care about, do they like who they are? Are they happy with who they are? Are they living in alignment with their values and integrity? Are they being the best versions of themselves that they can be at any time? And focusing on themselves and not giving a ish about what anybody else is saying or doing. So my overall advice here is the exact same, because if you're focused on yourself and you're happy with your own life and you trust your own life, then you aren't worried about managing somebody else's. And if you have the time and energy to want to control someone else's life, I challenge you to consider, what part of your own life are you avoiding by focusing on someone else in this way? And again, if this is you, I'm not criticizing you. I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm saying this so you can change it and show up better in your life for yourself and for the people around you. And if you've been living your life in this fixer or caretaker role, this is not your burden to carry anymore. Because again, it may have kept you safe at one point, but you don't need to do it anymore. And lastly, if you are the receiver of unsolicited advice, sometimes you need to be the one to speak up and say, hey, I just needed to vent. I don't need advice, or somehow set a boundary. Because again, I think a lot of this is, one, happening unconsciously, so they're not aware that they're doing it. Also, I do believe most of this is coming with good intentions, even though the root is in these dysfunctional behavior patterns. So it's also on the receiver's end, we have the responsibility to speak up and be like, hey, I don't need advice, especially if this is a recurring thing with a friend or family member or whatever. And I mentioned this in my last video, but I'm being serious this time. My next 3 videos are going to be about the 3 primary beliefs that people pleasers have, and I'm going to break them down and show you, first of all, they're not true. Second of all, how you can reprogram your behaviors and beliefs with real action items. And one of them is my worth comes from what I do for others, because I do think this is a root of a lot of unsolicited advice. So stay tuned, and I will see you in the next video.